The church fell into a haunting silence as Aaliyah's casket was carried down the steps. Sunlight glinting off the polished wood while cries from heartbroken fans filled the summer air. In the sea of mourners, one young woman collapsed, overcome by grief, so heavy it felt like the sky itself was weeping. Paramedics rushed in, but the sorrow in that crowd was beyond saving. These women were more than just stars. They were the embodiment of Black beauty, brilliance, and resilience. Icons who carried the pride of an entire generation on their shoulders. Yet, behind the glamour of red carpets, the dazzling gowns, and the perfect smiles, few ever saw the silent wars they fought alone. Hidden illnesses, private heartbreaks, secrets they took with them to the grave. Why did these extraordinary women choose to bear their pain in silence? What truths did they hide behind their radiant glow? Tonight, we pulled back the curtain on the untold stories of 21 remarkable actresses, unveiling the heartbreak, the courage, and the secrets they carried with them into eternity. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge was more than a Hollywood beauty. She was a trailblazer wrapped in light and shadow. In 1954, she shattered racial barriers when she became the first African-American woman ever nominated for a Best Actress Oscar for her mesmerizing performance in Carmen Jones. With her honey-brown skin, soulful eyes, and an elegance that seemed effortless, Dorothy became the embodiment of grace and power. The world adored her, but behind that radiant smile was a woman quietly breaking. On the morning of September 8th, 1965, the illusion ended. Dorothy was found lifeless in her small Hollywood apartment. The scene was eerily peaceful, her body lying still on the bed, the room untouched, a single phone bill resting on the floor. To anyone else, it was just paper, a list of numbers and charges. But to those who knew her, it was something far more devastating. Those numbers told the story of a woman reaching out in desperation. Late-night calls to friends, to family, to anyone who might listen. Calls that went unanswered. Dorothy had turned that bill into a silent confession, a record of her final cries for help in a world that saw only her beauty, never her pain. Beneath the glamour and applause, she carried a loneliness too heavy to bear. Her death was more than a tragedy. It was a mirror reflecting the cruel indifference of Hollywood's golden age. Dorothy Dandridge wasn't just another fallen star. She was a woman who dared to shine in a world determined to dim her light. And even now, her story lingers like a haunting melody, beautiful, tragic, and forever unfinished. Diane Carroll. Diane Carroll wasn't just a star. She was Hollywood royalty, a queen of grace, beauty, and quiet mystery. With every role, she shattered barriers and redefined what was possible for Black women in an industry built to keep them out. Her elegance wasn't just seen, it was felt. When she became the first African-American actress to win a Golden Globe for Best Actress, she didn't just take home a trophy, she carved her name into history. Her groundbreaking role in Julia wasn't merely a performance. It was a revolution wrapped in style and courage. But behind the dazzling smile and flawless poise was a woman who carried her struggles in silence. In her later years, Diane fought a private battle with breast cancer, refusing to let illness dim her light. Only a few close friends knew the truth. She wanted the world to remember her not for her weakness, but for her strength, for the way she stood tall, even when life tried to bend her. On October 4th, 2019, at the age of 84, she passed away peacefully in her home. They found her in her favorite armchair, her eyes gently fixed on the glow of her television, ironically replaying Julia, the show that made her immortal. It was a moment both heartbreaking and poetic. Her passing marked more than the end of a legendary career. It was the closing of a life defined by resilience, elegance, and quiet defiance. Even in her final silence, Diane Carroll left behind a message to the world. True strength isn't loud. It's graceful, unbroken, and everlasting. Cicely Tyson, the silent final act of a legend. Cicely Tyson wasn't just an actress. She was a revolution wrapped in grace. a pioneer who redefined how the world saw black women on screen. From Sounder in 1972 to the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman in 1974, her performances weren't just roles. They were reflections of dignity, resilience, and unbreakable spirit. With every glance, every pause, every tear, Tyson broke barriers that had stood for generations. She earned countless awards, yes, but her real legacy was the door she opened for those who followed. On January 28, 2021, at the age of 96, Cicely Tyson's remarkable story reached its quiet finale. That morning, she took her medication, settled into her favorite armchair, and simply rested, her face calm, her soul at peace. What few knew was that she had been silently battling breast cancer in her final years. She chose to keep that struggle private, fearing it might overshadow the image of strength she spent her life building. Even as her body weakened, her will never did. She kept working, kept inspiring, determined that her final chapter would be written on her own terms. Just days before her passing, she was honored once more, a poetic farewell to a woman who gave her entire being to art and truth. Cicely Tyson's final act wasn't performed beneath stage lights, but in the quiet dignity of a woman who lived fearlessly, loved deeply, and inspired endlessly. Her silence at the end wasn't the absence of sound. It was the echo of a legacy that will never fade. Ruby Dee. Ruby Dee's final chapter unfolded not in the spotlight, but in the quiet stillness of a hospital room, a sacred space where her remarkable journey came to rest. A trailblazer of stage and screen, she broke barriers in A Raisin in the Sun and brought fire to American Gangster. But Ruby's legacy was never confined to the role she played. She was a voice for justice, a warrior for equality, and a woman whose grace could silence a crowd. On June 11, 2014, at 91 years old, Ruby slipped peacefully from this world after her final treatment. Those who entered her room found her hands still clasped tightly around that of her late husband, Ossie Davis, as if their love had bridged the space between life and eternity. The air was heavy with reverence. No tears, no chaos. Only the quiet understanding that a powerful soul had gone home. In her later years, Ruby faced breast cancer with the same quiet strength that defined her life. She chose to fight privately, insisting that even after Ossie's passing, her pain remained her own. She didn't want pity. She didn't want her power defined by illness. She wanted to be remembered as the fierce, luminous woman who gave everything to her art and her people. Ruby Dee's death was not merely the end of an era. It was the revelation of her deepest truth. Behind the applause and accolades stood a woman who bore her struggles in silence, yet radiated courage with every breath. She gave the world brilliance, dignity, and unshakable pride, and left it quietly, still holding the hand of the man who once called her his queen. Juanita Moore, the hidden battle behind the spotlight. Juanita Moore, the trailblazing African-American actress who captured hearts with her soul-stirring performance in Imitation of Life, 1959, was far more than a Hollywood beauty. She was a beacon of grace, courage, and quiet defiance. An icon who shattered racial barriers in an era when roles for black women were painfully limited and stereotypes ran deep. But behind her poise and timeless smile, Juanita carried a burden she never shared. In 2001, at the age of 87, the world lost her. She was found resting peacefully, as if she had simply drifted into a gentle sleep. Yet that calm masked a heartbreaking truth. Juanita had been battling cancer in silence for years. Afraid that her illness might overshadow her legacy, she chose dignity over disclosure. Late at night, under the cover of anonymity, she would slip into doctors' offices and pharmacies, quietly collecting the medication that kept her strong enough to keep working. Even as her body weakened, her spirit never faltered. Her final act was one of extraordinary courage, a woman's silent vow to protect her loved ones from worry and preserve the image of the graceful star the world adored. When the truth finally came to light, fans and family alike were left humbled by the strength of a woman who had given everything, yet asked for nothing in return. Nichelle Nichols. Nichelle Nichols, the woman who turned science fiction into social revolution. Best known as Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, Nichelle wasn't just performing, she was pioneering. At a time when roles for women, especially black women, were almost non-existent, she stood on the bridge of the Enterprise as a symbol of hope, equality, and possibility. She wasn't just exploring the stars. She was opening the door for generations to follow. Off-screen, Nichelle carried that same courage into real life. She worked with NASA to inspire women and minorities to reach for the stars, proving that representation could change not just television, but history itself. On July 30th, 2022, the world said goodbye to this remarkable woman. She passed peacefully at the age of 89, discovered by her devoted son, Kyle Johnson, in their Silver City, New Mexico home. Even in her final years, battling heart disease, Nichelle faced her struggles with grace and quiet strength. When her condition worsened, she chose to go to the hospital alone, a final act of love, protecting her family from worry. Nichelle Nichols was more than an actress. She was a trailblazer, a dreamer, and a beacon of light in a time of darkness. Her legacy doesn't fade. It travels onward across generations and galaxies, reminding us that true stars never die. Lena Horne. She was elegance incarnate, the eternal beauty whose voice could stir the soul and whose courage broke Hollywood's color line wide open. In stormy weather, she didn't just sing. She shimmered defiant and divine, rewriting what it meant to be a black woman in a world built on boundaries. To the public, Lena Horne was untouchable, glamorous, powerful, timeless. But behind that dazzling smile was a quiet storm no one ever truly saw. On a peaceful May morning in 2010, at the age of 92, Lena slipped away in her New York home. Family and friends arrived to find her resting in a sunlit room, the windows open, the breeze whispering through, serene, untroubled beyond pain. It was as if time itself had paused to honor her grace. What the world never knew was that Lena had carried her pain in silence. For years, she battled breast cancer privately, taking her pills each morning, not for pity, but for purpose, to rise, to perform, to remain the embodiment of strength and grace she'd always been. Even in her final act, Lena Horne was the consummate performer, poised, resilient, and radiant until her very last breath. Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou, a name that still echoes with grace, courage, and truth. One of the most powerful voices of the 20th century, she gave the world not just poetry and prose, but soul. Through masterpieces like I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Maya transformed her own pain into art that spoke of freedom, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. Yet behind her luminous words was a quiet battle the world never saw. Like many great artists, she bore her suffering in silence, confiding only in those closest to her. On May 28, 2014, at the age of 86, Maya Angelou passed away peacefully in her North Carolina home, surrounded by love. Only then did her family reveal the truth, that she had been privately fighting cancer in her later years. She never wanted the world to see her weakened. She wanted to be remembered not for her illness, but for her voice, her wisdom, and her strength. Maya Angelou was more than a literary icon. She was a movement, a woman who turned pain into poetry and hardship into hope. She lived exactly as she wrote, unyielding, dignified, and radiant, refusing to let suffering dim the light of her spirit. Tamara Dobson. Tamara Dobson, the statuesque goddess who brought Cleopatra Jones to life in the 1970s, was far more than just a movie star. She was power personified, tall, fierce, and impossibly elegant. In an era that often tried to shrink women, Tamara stood taller, literally and figuratively, showing the world what strength looked like in heels. Her presence commanded attention, her beauty defied convention, and her confidence inspired a generation of women to walk taller. But behind that dazzling smile and magnetic grace, a quiet storm was raging. In October 2006, that radiant light was dimmed forever. On what began as an ordinary morning, Tamara missed an important appointment. When her housekeeper went to check on her, he found her lying still, serene, as if she had simply drifted into a peaceful dream. But it wasn't sleep. Tamara Dobson was gone. Only after her passing did the world learn her heartbreaking secret. She had been silently battling multiple sclerosis and pneumonia for years, choosing to endure her pain in private rather than let the world see her weaken. She fought her illness with the same quiet strength that defined her career, always returning to the public eye with poise, grace, and that unforgettable smile. Her death left a void in Hollywood, and in the hearts of those who saw her not just as an actress, but as a symbol of resilience and pride. Tamara Dobson's story reminds us that even the brightest stars can fight their hardest battles in silence, and that behind every image of perfection, there may lie a story of unspoken pain and extraordinary courage. Roxy Roker. Roxy Roker's final moments reflected the same quiet grace that defined her extraordinary life. Best known for her groundbreaking role on The Jeffersons, she was more than an actress. She was a symbol of progress, resilience, and dignity in American television. As one of the first Black women to achieve mainstream fame on the small screen, Roxy shattered boundaries and paved the way for countless others to follow. But on a calm December morning in 1995, the world lost her gentle light. Friends visiting her home found her resting peacefully on her favorite living room couch, her expression serene, as if she had merely drifted into a dream. There were no signs of pain, no cries for help, only an almost sacred stillness, the kind that makes you whisper instead of speak. When her name was softly called and no answer came, hearts broke in quiet disbelief. Roxy was gone. What the world didn't see was the battle she fought in silence. For years, she had been privately living with breast cancer, never allowing it to define her, never letting it dim her radiant spirit. She carried her pain with elegance, refusing pity, guarding her privacy with the same strength that guided her career. Even when fatigue crept in, she smiled through it, determined that her final act would be one of grace, not grief. In life and in death, Roxy Roker remained a portrait of courage, a woman who taught the world that true strength is often the quiet kind. Zara Cully. Zara Cully's passing quietly drew the curtain on a life that was nothing short of extraordinary. Best remembered as the sharp-tongued yet deeply beloved Mother Jefferson on The Jeffersons, she was far more than a supporting character. She was a pioneer. At a time when Hollywood offered few doors to African-American women, Zara kicked one open through sheer brilliance, wit, and authenticity. Her performances didn't just entertain, they inspired. On February 28, 1978, her final act came to a close. She was found at her Los Angeles home, near a vanity lined with cherished photographs, tender fragments of a life lived with dignity and fierce purpose. Among her belongings lay an unsent letter, revealing the private battle she had faced in silence: lung cancer. True to her nature, Zara had chosen to keep her illness hidden, sharing her truth only with those dearest to her. Even as her health declined, she carried herself with the same grace, humor, and quiet strength that had defined her entire career. Her death wasn't loud or publicized. It was gentle, dignified, a bittersweet goodbye to a woman who gave everything to her craft. And yet, her spirit endures. Every time Mother Jefferson's laughter echoes across the screen, Zara Cully lives again, fierce, funny, and unforgettable. Isabel Sanford, Louise Jefferson, and A Quiet Goodbye. Isabel Sanford will forever be remembered as the fiery, quick-witted Louise Jefferson from The Jeffersons, a woman who broke television barriers and redefined what it meant to be strong, Black, and unapologetically independent on screen. With her warmth, sharp humor, and regal presence, Isabel became more than just a beloved sitcom star. She became a symbol of dignity and determination for an entire generation. But in 2004, her story came to a quiet, heartbreaking close. It happened on an ordinary evening, Her lifelong friend, Martha, stopped by with a plate of freshly baked cookies, something she'd done countless times before. Yet this time, the house was too still. The front door stood slightly open, the air inside filled with an eerie calm. When Martha stepped in, she found Isabel sitting peacefully in her favorite armchair, the evening light spilling softly across her face. An unfinished novel had slipped from her hand onto the floor. Later, tucked away in her desk, they found a small wooden box. Inside, tiny vials and pale pink pills. Medication for heart failure, a battle she had kept private for years. Even as her heart weakened, Isabel lived her life the way she had always performed, full of grace, laughter, and quiet courage. She refused to let illness dim her light, and when her final curtain fell, she left the world exactly as she lived in it, with poise, peace, and strength that still inspires to this day. Nell Carter. Nell Carter was a Tony Award-winning powerhouse whose booming voice and magnetic energy lit up both stage and screen through the 80s and 90s. She embodied resilience, a woman whose laughter could fill a room, even while her own heart carried heavy secrets. But behind that radiant smile was a silent battle few ever saw. On a quiet January morning in 2003, a familiar delivery arrived. White orchids, her favorite flowers. The florist, Maria, expected to hear Nell's voice belting out gospel tunes as she always did. Instead, the house was still. The front door stood slightly ajar. Inside, Nell sat peacefully in her favorite armchair, a silk scarf sliding gently from her lap to the floor, as if the world itself had paused to listen one last time. Later, when loved ones sifted through her things, they found a small music box tucked inside her bedside drawer. Beneath its velvet lining lay a glucose monitor and a few used insulin syringes, quiet evidence of a private war she'd waged against type 2 diabetes. For years, Nell had kept that pain locked away, refusing to let it dim her light or her laughter. Nell Carter, the woman with the thunderous voice and unbreakable spirit, left this world as gracefully as she lived, surrounded by her music, her orchids, and the bittersweet truth that even the brightest stars can suffer in silence. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston, the voice that could move heaven, yet carried storms within. She wasn't just a singer. She was a miracle of sound, a force so powerful it could lift souls and shatter hearts in the same breath. With timeless anthems like I Will Always Love You and Greatest Love of All, Whitney didn't just perform, she transcended. Her voice became the heartbeat of generations, echoing through every corner of the world. But behind the glamour, the laughter, and the standing ovations, there was a woman silently breaking. On February 11th, 2012, the world lost its songbird. Whitney was found lifeless in her Beverly Hills hotel suite, a golden microphone resting nearby, as if she had sung her final lullaby to the world. Later, an unreleased audio tape surfaced, filled with haunting melodies and sorrowful confessions that the world was never meant to hear. It was then we realized the woman whose voice once soared beyond pain had been quietly fighting her own. Behind the radiant smile was a soul weighed down by loneliness, fame, and unspoken wounds. Whitney Houston's death wasn't just a loss. It was a heartbreaking reminder that even the brightest stars can fall, leaving behind only echoes of beauty, heartbreak, and silence. Aaliyah, the untold secrets of a tragic journey. She wasn't just a singer, Aaliyah was a phenomenon. With her angelic voice, effortless style, and magnetic grace, she redefined what it meant to be a star. Every song she touched became a heartbeat of a generation. By 22, she had the world at her feet, the charts, the fame, the promise of a glittering future. But on August 25th, 2001, that future vanished in an instant. Aaliyah's plane crashed shortly after takeoff from the Bahamas, ending a life that had only just begun to shine its brightest. The world was left in disbelief, mourning not just a performer, but a light that felt eternal. Yet behind the beauty and success Aaliyah carried quiet battles few ever knew about. She had been suffering from a serious eye condition that required urgent surgery, a struggle she kept hidden from the public, never wanting her pain to overshadow her art. Even in silence, she was strong. Even in suffering, she smiled. Her death was more than a tragedy. It was the silencing of a voice that had only started to show its true power. Today, her songs still echo through time, and the secrets she carried remain buried with her, a haunting reminder of how fragile brilliance can be. Florence Ballard. Florence Ballard's fall from grace remains one of Motown's most heartbreaking tragedies. As a founding member of the Supremes, she wasn't just another background voice. She was their heartbeat, their soul. With her powerhouse vocals and magnetic stage presence, Florence helped shape the sound that defined a generation. But behind the sparkle and fame was a woman fighting silent battles no one could see. Betrayal, loss, and emotional turmoil shadowed her rise to stardom. Pushed out of the very group she helped create, her dreams began to crumble. By 1976, the world was stunned when news broke that Florence Ballard had been found lifeless in her home, gone at just 32. Later, her family revealed the heartbreaking truth. She had been suffering quietly, battling severe hypertension and other hidden health struggles while trying to hold her life together. Florence's death wasn't just the loss of a singer. It was the silencing of a radiant, once-in-a-lifetime voice that still echoes through Motown's golden halls. Her story is a haunting reminder of how fragile brilliance can be, and how the spotlight can sometimes cast the darkest shadows. Minnie Riperton. Minnie Riperton's death was a heartbreak the world saw coming, yet no one was truly ready for it. Best known for her angelic masterpiece, Loving You, Minnie possessed one of the most breathtaking voices in music history. A sound so pure, it felt as if heaven itself had lent her its tone. But behind that ethereal brilliance was a quiet, private war she fought with grace and unshakable dignity. On July 12, 1979, at just 31 years old, Minnie lost her battle with breast cancer, leaving behind a legacy far too luminous for such a brief life. Though she spoke candidly about her illness, she never allowed the world to witness the depth of her pain. She faced her final days with poise, refusing to let suffering define her story. After her passing, loved ones uncovered journals and sketches, intimate windows into the mind of a woman who transformed agony into art. They revealed a soul as vibrant and resilient as her voice. Minnie Riperton was not just a singer. She was light personified, a spirit that refused to fade. Her voice may have gone silent, but its echo still dances through time, a dream unfinished, yet a legacy eternal. Madge Sinclair. Madge Sinclair, the luminous actress who graced the screen in Coming to America and lent her regal voice to the Queen in The Lion King, carried a secret the world never saw coming. Admired for her poise, elegance, and commanding presence, she embodied grace in every frame. But behind that warm smile and queenly composure, Sinclair was waging a private war. In 1995, at just 57, she passed away peacefully, leaving fans and colleagues heartbroken and stunned to discover she had been silently battling leukemia for years. She had hidden her pain with remarkable strength, never letting the world see the toll it took. Among her belongings, a small prop box revealed her truth. Inside, a delicate notebook filled with trembling handwriting and haunting sketches told the story she never spoke. Not stage notes, but symbols of endurance, fear, and quiet resilience. Madge Sinclair was more than an actress. She was an artist who turned suffering into soul, transforming pain into timeless beauty. Her passing wasn't just the loss of a star. It was the farewell of a woman who faced death with dignity and turned silence into art. Her legacy endures as a glowing testament to strength, grace, and the eternal power of storytelling born from the depths of the human spirit. Barbara McNair. Barbara McNair, a name that shimmered across stages and television screens in the 1960s and 70s. With her smooth, soulful voice and radiant elegance, she became one of the first black women to break barriers in both music and film. Every note she sang carried grace, confidence, and a quiet fire that drew people in. But behind that dazzling smile, Barbara carried a private pain few ever saw. In her later years, she faced a relentless battle with throat cancer, the very illness that threatened to silence her greatest gift. Yet Barbara never let it steal her spirit. Even as her body weakened, she stood tall, performing with the same warmth and passion that had defined her career. She refused pity, choosing instead to meet her struggle with unshakable dignity. When Barbara McNair passed away in 2007 at 72, the world lost more than a singer. It lost a symbol of perseverance. Her legacy isn't just found in her songs or her screen roles, but in her courage to face darkness with light. She remains an eternal reminder that behind every shining star lies a story of strength, sacrifice, and the will to keep singing no matter the pain. Ethel Waters. Her story is a haunting melody wrapped in the folds of time, a soul who turned pain into poetry. Ethel Waters wasn't just a voice that could stir a nation. She was a force of nature, a performer who carved her name into the heart of American history. By the time she passed away in 1977 at the age of 80, her legacy was already immortal. But behind the radiance of fame, she carried a quiet sorrow that no spotlight could ever touch. In her final years, Waters lived in near silence, battling a cruel heart condition that stole her breath and strength little by little. Yet she never let the world see her suffering. With unmatched dignity, she smiled through the pain, performing until her body could no longer bear the weight of her spirit. After her passing, investigators discovered a small handbag she kept close wherever she went. Inside lay fragments of her hidden struggle, crumpled medical bills, handwritten notes of doctor visits, and an old photograph of her younger self, eyes still filled with hope. That bag became a time capsule of her resilience, a private journal of endurance, faith, and the price of greatness. Ethel Waters' legacy isn't just about her music or her groundbreaking roles. It's the story of a woman who gave her all to art, while quietly fighting a battle she never spoke of. Her life reminds us that behind every legend lies a beating heart, brave, wounded, and beautifully human. So as we close the chapter on 21 extraordinary black women who illuminated the world with their brilliance, we invite you to reflect. Which story moved you the most? Whose struggle lingered in your heart? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Because behind every dazzling light of Hollywood lies a truth far more powerful: the courage to shine, even when the heart is breaking.